Imagine, you're a parent in the middle of a custody battle. The fate of this decision determines how often you get to see your kids. Now imagine further that you're deaf or disabled. You put in a request with the court to get an American Sign Language interpreter so that you can understand and partake in all of your court proceedings. But what if that request was denied? What would the outcome of that trial be?
Take, for example, Ricardo Harris from Georgia. He was a top deaf student in college, and while on vacation, he was accused of murder. He was never given an interpreter, never able to communicate with his own attorney, and was never allowed to defend himself, therefore resulting in a conviction and jail sentence. Since 2013, he has been trapped in prison, unable to communicate with legal help, friends, or family.
Another sad story is that of Jerry Cohen, a recovering addict who had been trying to get to rehabilitation programs. Unfortunately, none of the programs allowed for ASL or ASL interpreters. Without access to help, he slid back into addiction, was arrested for related charges, and was jailed for the next 10 years, unable to communicate with any others. Only able to understand ASL, he couldn't read the prison rules, and no one ever explained them to him in ASL. In disciplinary hearings in the prison, he was never given an interpreter, and handcuffed, he couldn't even gesture in the hearings. As a result, he was often severely punished and shoved into solitary confinement, living a painful life in prison.
Unfortunately, the numbers show that these are not isolated cases. Of the 2.3 million people in prison in the US, 750,000 of them are disabled, and 153,000 of them are deaf or have significant hearing impairments. That means almost 1 in 3 prisoners have a disability, and 1 in every 20 prisoners are hearing impaired. Those numbers are far higher than the 1 in 5 US citizens with a disability, and the 1 in 50 US citizens with significant hearing difficulties.
So if a country that prides itself on the impartiality of equality and justice can so blatantly ignore those grand injustices, then is any of it actually fair? If every citizen does not have a fair chance at due process because their disabilities cannot be accommodated, then we cannot truthfully say that the system is honorable. In fact, it'd be quite fair to say that the system has been discriminatory and continues to be, because it does not provide people with the necessary tools they need to become successful.
As members of the NIAC mock trial team, we have seen such unfairness against the disabled and marginalized play out time and time again in our cases. Whether these injustices are against witnesses trying to share their experiences, defendants trying to escape wrongful imprisonment, or plaintiffs and petitioners fighting for their very rights. In our case just this year, we often saw the testimony of an elderly neighbor be entirely ignored because the court was unduly prejudiced against those who had hearing and vision problems. Even though she was completely aware of what people said to her and could easily identify people coming and going, she had to suffer the humiliation of being labeled unreliable and untrustworthy. She was told that she couldn't see what she saw or hear what she heard. Beyond just hearing disabilities, we've represented many other marginalized groups, including a petitioner who's getting evicted because of what he wasn't able to understand in the city rules, and a student with behavioral and learning disabilities being thrown out of school on test day just to raise the school's scores. We fought to defend a woman suffering from severe trauma from being unfairly thrown in jail for murder. And we've seen courtrooms disregard the intricacies of colorblindness in a witness in order to make the ignorant assumption that she can't have seen what she said she did.
With experiences like these in just a mock trial setting, we can only imagine how justice is not being given to all. Because of this, we recognize that there is a genuine need for change in this broken system for both the hearing impaired and the broader community of disabled and marginalized people.
The American Disabilities Act, in Title II, requires that all people with all afflictions must be given equal and fair channels in which to communicate their stories to members of law enforcement and government agencies, such as the court system. However, as we've shown, the government has continuously failed to meet the standard, and we believe that it is time for this to end. Working alongside groups such as IEEE, we believe that we can set a new standard. IEEE is working to create new technologies that may transform the justice system. However, we must also work to allocate local funding towards hiring interpreters and other aides, and we must continue to share these stories and spread awareness on this issue.
We have spent our high school careers learning the ins and outs of this country's court system. We have learned to hold the law and those who practice it in the highest regard. But when this agency fails to provide the equality and justice that it promises, there can only be one response: a solution that will provide lasting change. Though those with impairments may not be able to hear our voices, it is important that the courts hear theirs.